morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Waterstone Media Podcast. As always, I am joined by Taylor Crook, who I believe is enjoying a dark and rainy day up in the great country of Canada. Taylor, how are you doing today, sir?
I am wonderful, and I am enjoying the dark and rainy day. I was saying to Ryan that I think it's my Scottish roots, but I love this. I love it when it's overcast and rainy. In Scotland, they call it dreek. The day is dreek when it's like that. So it is raining, so I guess that's not quite. But yeah, it's where I get my energy. I don't know why, but I really love it. Although yesterday was beautiful as well, and it was sunny. And my wife and I went out. We went for a breakfast walk where we got breakfast sandwiches and went for a walk. And then we went for a lunch walk where we got slices of pizza and went for a walk. So I enjoy that too. I'm easy to please. What can I say?
If you were to choose your ideal writing retreat location, would it then be someplace dark and dreary and cold because that's what would put you in the happiest mood?
I like, and part of the reason, and I'm sure you're the same way, it's part of the reason that I enjoy living in a part of the world where there's 4 seasons. So I like change in weather. So I would say, if I could hole up in an old castle in Scotland, and there's sunny days here and there, and then it's the nice overcast days, that would inspire me quite a bit. I think that'd be a pretty cool way to get some writing done.
I am the same way. I do sometimes deal with people who wonder why I would like to live in Minnesota, because the summers get so hot and humid and because the winters get very cold and bitter. And that's very much my reason, is that I love the changing of the seasons. And if you have not experienced what it is like to be outside on a warm spring day after the long cold winter, there is no feeling better than being out on a 50-degree day, which isn't very warm, but after a long cold winter, it just feels fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. And then vice versa. If there's some hot, humid weather and that heat breaks, you get a good summer storm, mm-hmm. and then the next day is nice and cool, and it still smells like fresh rain. Man, that's what's better. It's just, yeah, I agree. There's something about, and I get it. People love to be coastal and it's always sunny, and that's nice. I get it. I think my wife would probably like that, but she's half Jamaican, so she's got those Jamaican roots. So it can be 30 degrees Celsius and humid, and I'm just dying. And she's like, finally, I can wear shorts. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, what are you talking about? Let's stay inside and not melt.
So, as the audience can tell, Taylor and I tend to agree on things, which is the perhaps weakest segue ever towards our topic for this week, where we are talking about the collaborative process. Taylor and I wrote the book Path of the Eternal Sun together. It was our first collaborative work, and so we figured that we would take a chance and talk about what that process looked like for us, and what lessons we learned along the way. And then we're actually going to end the episode with a little bit of live collaboration, where hopefully we will see the results of next week. So, Taylor, let's start off with, as usual, a pretty easy question. What did the collaboration look like as we were writing Path of the Eternal Sun?
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit in the first episode that we did, where we talked about this process. But early on, I think the biggest sense I got was we were feeling each other out. So I was taking his lead a lot, which I think it's good to have. I mean, maybe not for every collaboration, but I think a mentor-mentee relationship is pretty conducive to making progress. And it's not that I feel like one person needs to be more deferential than the other, but I think if there's experience to defer to, I think that establishes, at least in the beginning, it establishes a framework for how your partnership's going to go. And then that way I can bring questions to Ryan and I can learn from him. And it just seemed to smooth the transition for me. I think even if I was working with someone that I had more experience than, I still think I'm pretty good at listening to other ideas and being deferential. But to me, there's just something about sort of an established hierarchy is a bad word because we are a partnership, but at least an acknowledgement of experience, I think, is helpful.
What was your favorite part of the collaborative process?
Honestly, anything that we're working on simultaneously, like when we got on calls together to talk about things and brainstorming, when we were doing a little bit of working over Skype in one document at the same time, that was good. I really do enjoy the partnership aspect of it where we're both there together. Writing's a very solitary gig, obviously. And that's great too. I enjoy that. You just, throw the music on, get to writing. But when you can share it with somebody that you work well with, I think that's a blast for me. And honestly, even just before we started this podcast, we ended up, just a couple quick notes about our project. And then it turned into a 15-minute conversation about where the project's going. And it's so much fun to see an idea build off of a collaboration. Like what the true meaning of a collaboration, when you give an idea and it bounces back and it bounces back and it just keeps improving, that's the best. That to me, that's the best part.
I think that I would agree with that too. If you were to ask me the same question, I would say that it is the additive nature of the collaboration. I've heard it said in other circles that when you're collaborating with somebody, 1 + 1 no longer equals 2. It equals 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever number you want to use.
It's exponential for sure.
But it really does feel that way, where the memories that stick out most clearly to me are the ones where we would hop on a phone call and we would be discussing the next plot point or a problem that we're having in the world, or maybe even something to deal with a character. And we would go back and forth and we would talk about the problem and we would debate different answers. And before long, 10, 15 minutes had passed and we had come up with something far greater than I think I ever would have come up with on my own.
Yeah.
And certainly more rapidly. When I'm writing my solo projects, I think the same process sometimes happens, but it's over draft after draft after draft of looking at something. Whereas with the collaboration, it was hop on the phone, talk about it. 10 minutes later, you've got something that you never would have come up with on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. To the point now where I will, if I'm stuck on something, I'll talk to myself about it. I will talk it out. I will have a full conversation with myself because vocalizing it helps, right? I don't get the advantage of another perspective, but I've also bothered you about my solo project as well. So I don't know if it's going to be a crutch for me now that I think you made a joke once early on when we were writing, and when I was like, I don't know if I want to do this by myself anymore. And you were like, the moment when your codependence or your codependent disorder.
I was laughing in my head as you were talking about talking to yourself. I just assumed it was because we've had so many conversations over the course of the past year that there's now just a little voice of Ryan just sitting in your head that you can have conversations with when you get bored.
There's a bit of that too. Should that be a comma or a period, Taylor? That's a period. Those are two sentences, Taylor.
Grammar. It's a thing. What do you think was, because you did write an entire novel that was very ambitious on your own before starting the collaboration, what was the most difficult part of adapting to the collaboration for you?
I mean, I guess it was being able to let go of ideas that I thought were good and that had holes poked in them. But that was only difficult for...
Lockpicks?
What's that?
Lockpicks?
Yeah, lockpicks. That was only difficult for like the first, little bit though, right? Because it immediately bore fruit. And I think it also speaks to the type of person that you are, that as a 20-plus novel veteran, successful author, you listen to my thoughts just as easily as you are giving me yours. So it always felt like a two-way street. So I think you probably that demeanor in you probably made the most difficult aspect of adjusting the easiest. And I would say even that when you did the developmental edit for my solo book, that was harder than having you poke holes in the ideas that I was bringing to our collaboration, because ours is a collaboration. My mindset's already there. Whereas when it's my own stuff, I have to let go of what I have, firmly believed was a good idea. Whereas I'm bringing it to you in the opening stages. So, but yeah, that's probably the hardest thing is sometimes you fall in love with a concept. Sometimes the idea is very cool in your head. But then when it gets out there, you realize, okay, yeah, it might be cool, but it doesn't work for this, and this. And you got to be able to let that stuff go. And that's a good lesson for me as a solo author as well.
I was thinking that in my case, I think it's something along the same lines. And the way that I think about it is in getting the visions, both for the book as a whole and for individual chapters and sections to align. Because I think even sometimes when talking about even something so small as a scene, there will be something playing in my head that may be subtly or not so subtly different than what's playing in your head. And getting those visions to align can sometimes be tricky. But again, I think that once we work those things out, things always end up better than I would have come up with on my own.
Absolutely.
I think particularly I think a lot of this in terms of characters, actually, because in Path of the Eternal Sun, I think I did not like the Sato-Crispin relationship very much when it first started. I think I even wrote comments in like some of the first edits of maybe even potentially deleting Crispin as a character, if memory serves.
I'm not sure if I remember that,
or at least
you wanted,
or at least toning him down a lot.
Yeah, you wanted to change some things for sure.
And I am so glad we did not do that. I'm so glad we did not listen to me in that case, because that was one of my ideas that when I first read, and my initial instinct was very much against what was written. And now, looking at where we are in the story, that relationship between those two characters is one of my favorite relationships in the whole novel.
Yeah, I agree.
And that was actually a case. I remember you actually stood your ground and fought for the Crispin and Alonso duo and how they were originally written.
Yeah.
And I mean, my memory is faded because I'm an old man, but I really do. I remember, I think I even deleted a few sections that had Crispin and Alonso in it. And you were...
So I don't think you got to the point of...
We're putting that back in.
I don't think you got to the point of deleting, but you did make a note in the first draft where you said that you thought it would be easiest if Alonso was not mute. You're just because you were like, oh, we're going to have to change some things here, but in there... And that's what I really remember pushing for, because I just thought it was such an interesting trait for him to have, and it could lead to such interesting things later on. And it's funny because one of the things my dad mentioned to me after he had read the book was that he liked that. He hadn't seen a character that had done that before, and he thought he had it. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, so yeah, and like you said, good example of both ways. You're willing to listen. It's good. But I don't think every collaboration goes like this either.
Well, I was glad that you were willing to stick up for it too, because obviously, I mean, 20 plus books or not, that doesn't make me write even a fraction of the time.
Oh, for sure.
I'm very glad that when you're like, nope, I have a good idea and I am sticking with it. I'm glad that works out.
Well, because then otherwise...
So we're going to transition a little bit here. Exactly, right? Then it's just having a writing minion.
That's right.
Which would be fun, but I don't need one. But we're going to transition a little bit to doing a little bit of a live collaboration. And I don't think I've really told Taylor all the details about this, so
nope,
you'll really be able to see this in real time. But the Path of the Eternal Sun, I would like to write a short story in that world. for our readers to be able to experience perhaps even a little bit of filler between this and the release of the second book. And that is basically all we have. One of the ideas that I had was that we keep the short stories shorter and we each write our own version of it and present it live on the podcast next week. Taylor, what do you think of that?
Yeah,
idea?
that's a really cool idea. I like that a lot.
So this would be how I would shape this activity. I'm going to propose a strict word count of, should we do 1,000 words or 1,500 words or less?
For a short story.
For a short story.
Let's split the difference. Let's say 1,200 words. A hard 1,200.
1,200? Hard 1,200 words. Can't go over it. A short story set in the Path of the Eternal Sun universe. And I think it would be most interesting for us to actually write the same story.
Okay.
So we'll come up with a plot here, live. And then next week we will read our stories and see how different they are.
Yeah, I like that.
How does that sound?
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool.
Okay, so the question is, what short story do we want to write in the Sentinels world? I was trying to think of something that would serve as almost like an additional epilogue to the first story.
Oh, okay. So after the events of the first story?
After the events of the first story, we can put a spoiler warning tag on the next episode. But something that would be interesting.
Well,
I personally think that the most interesting characters would be either Shin or Beast.
Okay.
Because they had the biggest character arcs in the first story. I mean, Sato did as well, but Sato between 1 and 2 doesn't change very much, so...
No, I agree, but I would propose that also we could avoid the spoiler issue, but we could maybe do a prequel story for Beast about how he sort of got onto the path of becoming, like, of wanting to become the Bandit King.
Oh, that would be fun.
And then that way we're not worried about spoilers. And it would be the lead up. It'd be the very first, to my mind, it's the first, it's like, okay, well, he's here. He's freed himself from wherever he was. And what is the path that he takes? Does he fall in with a group of bandits and then decide to become their leader and then decide, or does he just see that there's a bunch of bandits and think, maybe there's power here. Maybe there's something I can do.
Do we want to write the exact same scene where you and I decide what that looks like? Or do we want to just have us doing 2 separate stabs at how Beast becomes the Bandit King?
I'm kind of torn on that because I think it's interesting that if we wrote the same scene to see how we navigate it. I honestly think it's that. I think we write the same scene, like we write the same, like we just decide on the same sort of major plot points, and then that way we can see the difference of how we write to get him to those plot points.
Okay, wait. Let's make this crazier. Because I have another idea.
Yeah.
Let's do 2 short stories apiece.
Okay.
1,000 words.
All right.
Hard limit.
Yeah.
First short story is answering the question, what set Beast on the path towards becoming the Bandit King?
Okay.
That's your only prompt.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah, I like that.
Idea 2 serves as an epilogue. And let's have it be Shin.
Mm-hmm.
And let's write a scene where she returns to the farm.
Oh. Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah.
And let's say, what does Taylor remember Sentinels? Because I don't. What's the name of the child who bullies her in the first chapter?
Samuel.
Samuel. Let's have her return to the farm, and she meets Samuel
Yeah.
while she's there.
Yeah.
Sound good?
That sounds great.
For those of you who are on audio only, Taylor is grinning from ear
Yeah.
to ear
This,
right now.
I like this a lot.
As am I.
This sounds like a lot of fun. I'm into this.
Okay. So the first one, it'll be, we both have the same question. We'll see how we tackle it. It can be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, the scene is pretty well set. We know
What's happening, but it's wide
Let's see how we both write it.
Okay. Yeah, I like
Yep.
that. Yep. That's cool with me.
Sound good?
Yep. Definitely.
1,000 word, hard limit on both.
Hard limit on both. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. Cool. Well, Taylor, any final notes on collaboration? Because now I just want to go right.
I know.
so.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. No. Let's go right. No. I think that's it. I think that it is a valuable tool, but I don't think that you can force it. I think you have to find the right person to collaborate with, and I think we just are very fortunate that somehow over 900 miles we managed to form a partnership that has been very not only productive and lucrative, but just a ton of fun, which I think also is important because that shows in your work. So I'd say if you're looking for a collaborator, just be picky. Just find the right person.
I will say that I've done several collaborations now. I've always enjoyed my collaborations. They have always been fun. But this one has certainly been the richest and most rewarding, and the one that probably makes me laugh the hardest too. So
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it sounds like you have some dogs that need attention, and I've got some stories that need to go get written now. So, Taylor, as always, this has been a true pleasure. For
Absolutely.
everyone listening, all the links and show notes and transcription will be online as always. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you guys soon.